Why Do We Age? A presentation by Luke Franklin. The paradox of aging. The article that I did begins by postulating a question. It seems like falling apart with age would be extremely deleterious, and it would soon be bred out of the population, yet nearly every species on the planet does. Why? What people used to believe is that things would age so that they could leave room for their descendants. Things would age and die so that they wouldn't be outcompeting the things that they were creating, so to speak. Essentially a built-in self-destruct mechanism. And this line of thought persisted well into the 1900s. But it's not the case. This is a quote from the article. It says, since the cost of death to individuals likely exceeds the benefit to the group or species, and because long-lived individuals leave more offspring than short-lived individuals, given equivalent reproductive output, selection would not favor such death mechanisms. Essentially, evolution isn't forward-thinking, so to speak. Evolution doesn't have any way of knowing what the future will hold. It just, in the moment, the best fit organisms will live, and the ones that don't will die. So the benefit to the individual organism's rate of reproduction would much outweigh some nebulous sense of good for the population. And so this is kind of explained in a way by the fitness landscape. Essentially, the reason why aging might still exist is because it's not really worth adapting against, so to speak. The fitness model asks you to imagine all living things as sort of a topographical map. The higher the hill is, the more beneficial a trait for an organism. But they live on hills. Basically, most organisms live on hills in regards to certain traits, so they're essentially trapped on an island. Because going downward to find a higher hill would be detrimental to the organism in the short term, even if it would be good in the long term. So it's essentially trapped on this island, and it can't go to a higher optima because it would be too much of an investment and too long of an investment to having these organisms be disadvantageous before they finally became advantageous. And this, especially since, organisms already reproduce plenty and die before ever reaching old age in the first place. And so here's something else the article talks about, the mutation accumulation hypothesis. Because an organism's fitness only matters in regards to natural selection before they have finished reproducing, what happens after is irrelevant. This means that deleterious mutations that don't affect an organism until its past reproduction age are not selected against, and therefore pile up, causing these nasty effects that we call as aging. You can see these negative effects on this graph over here happen after what's known as the selection shadow. So it doesn't matter how many negative effects there are, they'll still get passed on because they don't affect an organism before reproduction age, and that's what causes aging. The antagonistic pleiotropy hypothesis. This hypothesis says that some genes which cause deleterious effects after an organism has stopped reproducing also cause beneficial traits before the organism has finished reproducing, and as a result are selected for despite the secondary effect hurting the organism after it has reproduced. So an example they give in the article is Huntington's disease and how it causes people to reach sexual maturity earlier even though they would die at 30. Because although today it might seem extremely deleterious to die at 30 years old, most humans didn't even make it that long out in the wilds in early human history, so it didn't really matter. And so it was only a beneficial trait because they would die before even experiencing the effects. And so here's what to take away from the article. It's likely not just one, but several reasons why aging occurs in organisms. And so the article exists to kind of explain this from an evolutionary standpoint. But it all kind of ties back to not being able to reproduce. Once an organism isn't able to reproduce, then it doesn't matter in the eyes of natural selection, so to speak. They're kind of tossed out. It's only relevant before you stop reproducing to have these beneficial traits. After that, your body kind of decays. And so this article was called The Evolution of Aging, and it was written by Daniel Fabian for Nature.com. I was able to find this article by using Google's Scholarly Articles feature and typing in aging evolution. The reason I was searching for this article in the first place was because I was curious about why animals age and looking for a way to possibly prevent this in the future once I become a professional biologist. Thank you.